Welcome to Democracy Now! News in Review. Prosecution Gap. Fear of children. What's going on? First of all, the prosecution gap. There was something on the order of 64,000 violations of the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act last year. Only 200 people work for the EPA as investigators, and only 38 people report these activities for the Department of Justice. 238 people in this country have the responsibility of investigating pollution. 64,000 committed, only 297 brought to trial. So it pays corporations and organizations not to follow the rules. And the rest of us have no idea, unless we're affected by something: bad water, bad air, toxic substances we either breathe or eat or drink. What's been going on? What shall we do? Is this something that we ought to be concerned about? Especially when we have a situation with climate changing. The fines for such things, 6,000 violations by one corporation, $27 million paid in fines. Another corporation, $40 million worth of fines. Large, but insufficient. So the issue is, how do we work, how do we deal, how do we use planet Earth? It is our home. And it is expected to remain our home, even though the astronomers and scientists are searching diligently for new locations in the solar system and other solar systems that have the facilities, the minerals, the water, especially the water, that are similar to those on Earth. So someday there may be pioneers going elsewhere in spaceships rather than in sailing craft, like the early explorers, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, discovering, in quotes, a land that has been occupied and used and cared for thousands of years before the years 1492. Something to think about? We are fearful of children. We are so fearful of children coming here seeking asylum that we've already begun to deport them. Let's take a look at this situation. Look at a map of Central America and see what's going on. The United States, Mexico. Let's look to see where these children, something in the order of 51,000 by now since the first of the year. They're fleeing from El Salvador, from Honduras, and from Guatemala. These three countries. And where are they going? They're seeking asylum in Mexico, in Belize, in Nicaragua, in Panama here. So they're going elsewhere, and they are also coming to the United States. We are concerned with those who come here. One political party is blaming the president for not being diligent, letting people come across the borders. We have one party that was instrumental in the erection of a fence across Arizona and this part of the country. How do we stop people from coming? They're desperate. The youngest child that was reported was 3 years old. Many of them are elementary school children, 8, 9, 10, occasionally younger. Some teenagers, 14, 15, 16, riding the freight trains that come from Mexico, South Mexico, to the border with the United States. What shall we do? A law was passed in 2008 indicating that if they come from non-adjacent countries to seek asylum, they'll be given asylum. They'll be given a hearing in court. They will be treated well. There are people in Congress now that want to repeal that law. Americans, for all of our faults, are known to have an open heart when people are in need. We contribute great sums of money for those elsewhere in the world and within our own country who are hit by various disasters. But these are children. All throughout the world, we judge a country, we judge a people by how children are treated. We have a violent streak in our psychic. Marietta, California, 3 busloads of children being taken to a place, to a facility where they can be better cared for. Buses stopped by the police. People came and shouted obscenities, slurs at those children. Buses went elsewhere. We have this violence. We try to live with it. Many of us are not able to. We live with the violence, and we continue acting with violence against one another. So what shall we do with these children? We are a wealthy country. There are people, private people, who, and some communities, are accepting these youngsters, taking care of them, providing them with what they need. They come on their own, apparently. The 3 countries where there's this great violence, just take a quick look at this map again. The violence is in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The violence is here, and the children are going in various directions. So, it's an issue. Are we expressing our concern in some way? Are we being the good citizen, the Samaritan, Something to consider. What shall we do? The situation with scaring, terrorism, called the Green Scare. Two young men, Tyler Lang and Kevin Olive, are going to be tried. What did they do? Well, they went to a farm in which mink are raised. Mink make wonderful milk. Mink fur makes wonderful, luxurious garments. And they let us, whatever there was, 1,000 or more mink free. Now there's a law, the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act. Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act. Any one of us who tries in any way to prevent animal abuse, we are instantly labeled terrorists and treated accordingly. Long jail terms, large fines. Well, the law originally had a minimum of 5 years, $250,000 fine. These two young men, if pronounced guilty, face at least 10 years in jail, plus the fine. Now, anybody caught photographing, videographing, audio tapes, any kind of evidence, people can't even go near the buildings or the property. If they do and they protest, they are considered under the Act, very broadly defined, are terrorists. So what shall we do? Industry doesn't like dissent. Constitution permits that. Dissent is and has been encouraged. But right now, in these times, the Constitution is not adhered to. Laws are made by the courts, especially the Supreme Court. People enforce the laws depending on their perspective. But the civil liberties, the rights of people. Now, all of these kinds of laws that are around protecting industry are called agriculture, gag laws, gagging people. And people who want to save the trees. Fracking comes under that same category. Wanting to save the water and the air free of toxic substances. It'll just be a matter of time before people who are gathering to oppose fracking are going to be arrested. Are we aware? Is there something that we should do? One of the things that we were learning recently is that the violence between the Palestinians and the Israelis seems to be getting worse. And one of the questions raised during an interview on Democracy Now!, the question, was there a spark ignited as the cause of the present violence? It was pointed out that the 3 Israeli youths who were who were captured and who were apparently immediately killed, was known to the Israeli government that it had happened. But that was not acknowledged. Instead, there was a search, capturing people, Palestinians, putting them in jail, all sorts of threats, all sorts of posturing. The basis of the violence. Could that have been so? We see that the Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, was very, very proud and quoted. He was proud of the precise targeting, the precision of the weaponry, the precision of the actual demolition and the killing. Which brings up the question, how come the hospitals, the homes of the disabled, the homes of some of the leaders of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, which is now a unified government, how come they homes, how come these precisions? Well, we now know. Deliberate, not just accidental, but deliberate targeting. What does that tell us? The United States of America, Great Britain, especially these 2 countries, and Israel, and others, but these 3 especially, are known to break international law. In our country, it is known that the White House and the Congress break our laws. Do we know our laws, our rights? What is happening in Israel, in Palestine, when the international law of occupation is ignored? What example do we set for our own people? What example do we set for the rest of the world? International law, UN, has declared that the occupation of Palestinians, their country, is contrary to international law. So they are there illegally according to the law. We, the United States and Israel, are allies. Are we in any way responsible for what goes on in that part of the world? These kinds of questions were brought up during a number of interviews There were 5 or 6 interviews regarding this question of the occupation of Palestine, the war, fighting. It occurs or reoccurs periodically. Something to think about. There were interviews with Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. 3 people especially involved with letting the rest of us know what's been going on. Chelsea Manning is in jail, 35 years. Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK. Snowden in Russia, given asylum. At least for the time being. We don't know how long that will be. People putting their lives on the line so that the rest of us will know what's going on in secrecy. It was through such activities that we now know of the surveillance of the United States, people throughout the world being surveilled. All kinds of records, and some of us really aren't paying attention. All telephone calls, all electronic communications, emails, knowing with whom we speak, we communicate, all kinds of information. Billions of pieces of information every week. As a matter of fact, billions on a daily basis. Are we aware that privacy is a very important ingredient of human life? We all, maybe hardwired in our systems, need privacy, need respect. What have we allowed to happen? What are we going to do? It's a big, important question. The biggest question of all, on a planetary basis, is what are we going to do with the situation regarding the changes in climate. Big international meeting coming up in September. Warnings earlier this week, warning that the situation is critical. A report, and will there be more information when it's revealed what the report contains, but the report apparently indicates that corporations, all of us, can take steps immediately to prevent the worst scenario, the one from which there is no possibility of survival in the long term. Well, it's an opportunity, it's a challenge. We have faced challenges in the past. Can we work together and make the changes? So the conference is in September. Look forward to it. Think about it. Express your opinions. In Indonesia, the election, the general trained by the United States, the dictator, military man, who was responsible for ordering the massacre of great numbers of people, apparently defeated. A new breath of air in that country, new opportunity. There'll be reports from time to time on that. Let's turn for a short while to an important event that occurred in Albany Sunday of last week. This is a front page story. The Albany Times-Union. These are photographs of everybody who was killed in Quebec, Lake Megantic, fracking oil explosion, practically wiped out the community. It was held at the Ezra Prentice. It was held at the Ezra Prentice housing development, and people met on the basketball court on South Pearl Street. These are photographs of two youngsters who were killed in that accident. It could happen here. There's a chain link fence that separates the railroad cars, those oil tankers, from the property. The homes line that area. If something happens, something serious, the back end oil is highly explosive, it's volatile. It'll destroy that neighborhood and the one across the street. Any kind of a tragedy will destroy a large section of downtown Albany bordering the Hudson River. Those trains come through Voorheesville, 100 cars at a time on many of those trains. Goes through Rochester, Syracuse, communities all along the rail lines, some coming from the west, some from the north, down to the Port of Albany. Great for the Port of Albany, potentially hazardous. So what shall we do? Here are some photographs that were taken. I'll find them here for a moment. Here they are. Right where they're meant to be. Some of the signs. This is one of the signs that was Unite for Safe Energy. Not a very good photograph. I'll have to get that redone, but this is some of the crowd. What looks like rain is an imperfection in the photograph. Terry Robin, famous for being active, attending various events where people are gathered to worry about civil rights and so. One of the speakers, the crowd, there were well over 100 people there. You're nearer to 140 or 50. One of the parts, the last part of the meeting, Sunday evening, it kind of brought tears to some people's eyes. Beneath each photograph, people solemnly placed a little bouquet. Not the best photograph in the world, but by that time it was dark. People were gathered, lingering to talk, and a solemn occasion. What shall we do about these things? Should corporations be required to let the communities know when the trains come through, what the routing is? Should corporations let communities know before they even start transporting hazardous material? But we have allowed corporations to be treated as individuals. And corporations wield great power in our country. Corporations are important. We need their strength, the products, the revenues generated, the work that's jobs, careers. But we also need to think about one another, don't we? To think of the effects of what we do. Do we? Wouldn't that be a human thing? A corporation is a legal fiction. It's created by people. In a sense, a corporation is licensed in a sense. But it's still a legal fiction. What rights does a legal fiction have? What rights should it have? Especially when we've seen the effects of how people act, how people run their organizations without thinking about the effects on others and the effects on the planet. Is it time that we incorporated into our lives the two questions: do we think of others, and do we think of others in relationship to life on earth? What would it be like if our decisions were made as if children truly mattered? After all, we pay lip service. Children are important. But what if we made our decisions as if children truly mattered? And what would life be like if we treated Earth as a garden, a renewable thing, not a destructive force? What would it be like? Have we ever thought about that? Well, it's been just realized that we're spying on our Muslim Americans. Spying of them. There are some attorneys, professional people, people from various walks of life. What shall we do? How long can we continue? How long should we continue? When should we stop? All these decisions need to be made. We're going to take a look at the current issue, the one that's still on the newsstands, of a Rolling Stone magazine. You can recognize it from the cover. And the story has to do with the Lone Star Crazy. What's going on in Texas? Men and women, men especially in the article, walking around with military-grade weapons, AK-47s and so. People stirred up to violence. An interesting story by Mark Benelli. Might want to look it up. Expecting the president to do all things. Two of the people who were involved, Dan Patrick, lower photograph, and Joey Patterson on the left. Patterson was a retired pilot. Former politician. Here with. All right. Well, let's look at this photograph here. I hit the camera and it's still jiggling. So let's go on to something else. Something's going on. Activities. Old songs. Is there something I can do by just slowing it down? Well, it's the...
That looks kind of...
Okay.
Very nice.
All right, well, third Wednesday of every month at the Old Songs in Boyersville, Irish Tunes Slow Session. An opportunity to play traditional Irish music. If you want to see something quite unusual and quite beautiful, drive Schoharie County on the Quilt Barn Trail. Now, you can pick up a copy of this probably at the Carrot Barn in Schoharie, but there are several dozen barns, buildings with these large paintings of quilts of various design. Gallaville, Schoharie, Middleburg, there's a cluster around there in Richmondville. Way down to the Gilboa area. All kinds of things. As a matter of fact, they would make a great presentation if somebody were to travel around and just photograph a cluster. Great for educational purposes, but a very unusual way of displaying art. At the plaza, all summer long, various activities. You can get a little folder listing the various activities for the rest of the summer. July 4th is over. 13 Kids Day. Fridays in August. Some of these are long since. Oh, by the way, talking about the stories, you might want to go down to the Port of Albany and visit the USS Slater, the only destroyer escort left in the world. It's has a new paint job and had some repairs. It's a nice place to visit. Part of our naval history. Here's something that may interest some and not others. A photograph. If you see one of these things around, here, this is how we go. Here it is. People can charge up their hybrid cars, their electric cars. This one's at the former 20 Mall, now called Hamilton Square. This is one in front of the health facilities. Recently, this was the Times Union in Albany. A toast to the pine bush. Now, young people, students at the University at Albany, started to work on saving the pine bush in September of 1969. And they worked and cleaned it up. Literally, back-breaking job. Trash, old automobiles, old household equipment, refrigerators, anything you can conceive of. By 1978, many of those students got really involved and organized to save the pine bush, an official organization. And over the years, saving several thousand acres of land in the middle of an urban area. Practically unheard of. Well, Central Park in New York City, but a pristine area within the center of a metropolitan area. The story is recorded. You can look it up on the internet. All of the lawsuits that were brought, money paid for attorney's fees through a monthly lasagna dinner created by volunteers, members of the organization. $10 here, $10 there, $12 here, there, all added up over the years. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people participating. So now it's official. Our junior Senator Gillibrand has seen to it that it's now on the National Register of Historic Places. She's Kirsten Gillibrand. Anyway, enjoy the treasure. There are some cartoons we'd like to talk about for our show for a few minutes. All from the Albany Times Union. It's that new printing press that has such wonderful results. But keep in mind, even though we smile, cartoons are a way to remember what's going on. Today's show is brought to you by the letters OMG and the number 47,017, which is now over 51,000 anyway. Migrant children coming here on their own, almost everyone on their own. Summer shower in the northeast, singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. We had a storm the other day where the rain just blew horizontally like that. What a glorious feeling. I'm happy again. So what's left of his umbrella. This is a reminder, also from the Times Union. Hold off on the casinos. Take another look at them. Be sure that that's what we want. It's not going to be quick cash like it once seemed to be. In casinos, if you're reading the latest news in the New York Times, casinos in Atlantic City are not doing well at all. When we blame the president and saying that he has not the capacity to lead, perhaps we should keep in mind what's really happening. Here's another cartoon. Holding cell. What shall we do to help the children? And here's another one. We have to remember who is doing the most to help the corporations. And it falls on the shoulders of 5 men. They are all wearing black robes. The current issue of Solidarity Notes, a great publication every month. Just a reminder, Solidarity Notes. Thomas Jefferson. I hope we shall crush in its birth the aristocracy of our moneyed corporations, which dare already to challenge our government to a trial of strength and bid defiance to the laws of our country. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to George Logan, dated 1810. But this is really something important. What's happening on our campuses? Well, administrators seem to be doing very, very well. But in the interest of keeping prices down or salaries down or whatever, there's something called an adjunct professor, a person who has virtually no status at all in the academic system. As a matter of fact, treated rather shabbily. Now, if they get an average of $2,700 per course, and they go to one university or one college and another to try to make up enough for a full-time job, they can expect to earn about $20,000 per year, an income that leaves many of them and their families officially classified as living in poverty. Some apply for and receive food stamps. We talk about the need for higher education, but what's going on? Where some of the largest universities are paying their administrators more than $1 million a year. Now, that was written by a man named Larry Whitler, Professor Emeritus from SUNY Albany, great historian, and a man of great courage, and a man who stands all his life for the right things. And there's another story on the first page of the July issue, Bomb Train, raising the question about our governor being a bully. And wondering what decisions he's going to make. Will it be pro-fracking or will it be anti-fracking? as many of his constituents want. One other thing, let's see here. Here it is. There was a meeting at the Interfaith Alliance recently, and this flyer from the National Coalition to Protect Civil Freedoms regarding a man named Ziged Yagi, been in solitary confinement since last October. And this is a call for people to write to the warden of this prison and send copies to the White House and to the Department of Justice. We know that solitary confinement is the worst of all punishments, because it literally destroys a person's mind. Literally destroys it. And we now know that under no circumstances should anybody be in solitary confinement for more than 15 days, 2 weeks. Some people break down in less time than that. And we've had people in solitary confinement, especially in New York State, for 40 years, out in the Auburn area. So, are we aware of what we do to one another? Are we aware that things happen and we are actually responsible because all things are connected? That's the principle of environmental work, ecology. It works on a human level, it works on a nature level. This is an editorial from, a part of an editorial from Sunday, July 13, Limits of Free Speech, by the Times Union Editorial Board. It makes a comparison. Makes a comparison that freedom is not equally applied. Hobby Lobby has a right of free speech, is what the issue was. The message from this case is shouting protesters are free to intimidate women. It's not Hobby Lobby, misspoke. Intimidate women on their way to abortions. They can stand and they can shout and they can harass these people. But if people are demonstrating against drones or some other things that are in that category of violence, their free speech is not respected. It turns out recently that a woman was arrested. She was on the sidewalk. She was told the sidewalk and the entire street is off limits. And that would protect, the effect was protecting the military base in the Syracuse, Utica area from men and women protesting the drones. So this was an opinion regarding equal justice, where people can shout at women going for an abortion and harass them, but you dare not harass the military or the federal government, even if you're silent, even if you're just not in any ways violent. Interesting. What have we become as a country? It doesn't matter. Does it matter what we teach our children? Had we thought about that? So now, in just a quick review, we talked about the recent situation in Albany with the protests against the bomb trains, as they're called. We talked a little bit about some of the activities going on in the area. There's all sorts of things going on up at SPAC and around. Big event in Saratoga coming up. And by the way, the track is going to open in a few days. So there'll be a lot of people going up and enjoying the horses and the excitement of the races. The situation in Albany, we still need help. The food bank, the food pantries. People actually growing extra food and giving it to the food bank or to the food pantries. We've got a lot of independent organizations, businesses. Support your independent bookstore, independent cinema, all things independent. Bakeries, all good things. It's almost time to go. Thank Glenn Jarrett for his engineering. We look forward to being together next time. In the meantime, if you don't like what you see or hear, organize. Get people together. Figure out what's going on. State your rights. Let your congressmen, state people, senators, and assembly people know what your feelings are. Elections will be coming up soon. Pay attention. Look forward to being together next time. I've been your host, Lou Ismay.
We the people, hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare.